Hey everybody, thank you for downloading episode 121 of We Got This with Mark and Hal. Mark and I are going to be live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in just about 1 month, and you can come see us. It's going to be at the Ruba Club Friday, July 21st at 8 p.m. Get tickets at bit.ly/WeGotPhilly. So hope to see you there. But for now, enjoy episode 121 of We Got This with Mark and Hal.
Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all, best Mel Brooks film.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcast should have a theme song. Podcast should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Hi, Hal.
Hi, Mark.
Where are we right now?
We're in your new apartment.
My new apartment.
You almost didn't get it.
I almost didn't get it, but I got it. I was driving with all my stuff, and I got an email that said, "Oh, I didn't know you were coming. I rented the place out." Then I had a freak out for a little while because everything I owned was in a van. But now we're in that apartment.
How did you get an apartment on a handshake?
Because that's how we do things in La Familia.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and the fewer questions you ask, the better.
Okay, we're not here to talk about your housing.
No, we're not.
We're here to talk about the films of Mel Brooks.
Wait, the films of Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks.
Like well, we can't do that ourselves.
We can't.
No.
That's why we brought a guest. He is the middlest brother of the first family of podcasting. Am I the first one to say that, Travis?
That I'm the middlest brother? No, I say that all the time.
The first family of podcasting. That's a great moniker.
Is that true?
I don't know.
It might be true.
You're not the first, you're the first family, you're the reigning family.
Oh, no, we're the Osmonds of podcasting, the Jacksons of podcasting.
So many podcasts, including one that we have together.
This is true.
So many.
It's rarely updated, but beloved, much beloved.
It's rare, it was like a rare magic book.
I would like you, Hal, I need you to read my t-shirt, please.
Okay. It says, "Piss on you. I'm working for Mel Brooks."
Yeah.
Wow, you wore a t-shirt specific to
Can I
this
tell you something?
episode.
No joke. I forgot. I did not make the connection. I brought this t-shirt with me and I wore it and then I was like, oh yeah, that's going to be really appropriate.
You're just that much of a fan.
I really, this is no joke. I bought this t-shirt, to wear on the first day of making my brother and me TV show because I was so nervous.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can I curse?
No.
Okay. I was so freaking nervous that I needed something. This was my Glenn Close secret that I buttoned my shirt up over it. But it was just at the end of the day, you're serving comedy and this is your thing. Don't worry about whether you're funny or not because you're doing this. And it was very empowering for me because, spoiler alert, I love Blazing Saddles very much.
Sure.
Yes. Is that Slim Pickens on the shirt?
Yes, it is.
There he is.
The Slim Pickens.
Yep. Hootin' and hollering.
And it comes in the food fight scene of the movie where it's where they bust through the wall of the musical number of The French Mistake. Mm-hmm. And the director played by Dom DeLuise tries to direct him and he says, "Piss on you, I'm working for Mel Brooks," and not in the face, and they punch him in the gut and says, "Thank you." I've seen this movie many times.
It is a brilliant movie. But we're not going to talk about that movie just yet.
We'll get to, okay.
We're going to get to that movie.
And then I will quote it word for word, starting from the beginning.
By all means, please do. We are going to start with the more recent things because let's be honest, they're not going to win.
Yeah.
Dracula Dead and Loving It has no chance.
No, okay. Yes.
Against anything else. We're going to go backwards chronologically, starting with Dracula Dead and Loving It. We could start with the producers, the remake, but not technically a Mel Brooks directed film.
Not only that, I also think, I think it is different enough from the original.
Yes.
But not so much as to be a different movie that I think the producers as a whole we can talk about. Mm-hmm. Because I think this musical number that's not in the original and this line that's not in the original.
Oh, sure.
Not enough of a standout.
As a concept.
Yes.
So the producers is going to get a buy as a concept.
Correct.
Will Young Frankenstein get the same treatment?
No.
Because the musical did not have as much impact?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
fair.
There
was a time when they were talking about doing a Blazing Saddles musical.
That would be amazing.
Would it?
Yeah.
Would it, Mark?
Yes, it would. Vast expanses, There's not terribly many songs in
Well,
it.
they have to write new songs.
Well, here's my thing. Okay. This is a spoiler, but as long as I say the thing is, I've thought many, many times about Blazing Saddles and if it could be made now, but I don't think it could.
The film could not be made now.
No, correct.
Right.
And so I think that making a different version of it, there's a lot you would have to change that I think would intrinsically change the, but we'll talk about when we get, let's start with
Dracula Dead and Loving It. A terrible, terrible motion picture. Not only Mel Brooks at his kind of laziest, but Leslie Nielsen at his laziest.
Well, here's the thing. I was talking with Justin about this today. Problem with Dracula Dead and Loving It compared to his other like spoof lampoon parody films, it's all joke, no story. Like they basically rely, like they just kind of swing vine to vine of like gag to gag.
Right.
That it's like, okay, so you just took like Stephen Dietz' Dracula, the story of Dracula, whatever the most like cookie cutter version of Dracula is, and then just like glued gags onto it.
Yeah.
That said,
so you don't care about any of the characters.
Right. And it's also like, okay, that's kind of a funny gag, but there's nothing about this movie that I walk out of like, but you know, if you took those away, it's still a really good movie, which I think is true of some of his other ones. But the moment where Steven Weber pounds a steak into Dracula and gets sprayed with like buckets and buckets of blood is hilarious.
Yeah, there are hilarious moments in it.
I like that moment. I like the moment where he's trying to put Amy Yazbek under his thrall, but the less handsome maiden is under his thrall as well. So it's sit down. No, you stand up. No, you lie down. That was a good, at that point, we're in 1995. And the good thing about a classic Mel Brooks movie is that it is frozen in the time at which it was made, but it's still, for some reason, those jokes can appear fresh and work. By the time we get to 1995, he's become he's almost a parody of himself. Not only that, but Leslie Nielsen has turned the corner from playing everything straight to making farting noises while he crosses his eyes. Yeah. So it's not he's become like unfunny grandpa from being like a serious guy who just turned into a brilliant comedic actor because he always played it straight.
Because he was still on the Virginian in his mind.
Yes.
Right. And that's funny. That's the thing. It's funny to see someone not know that they're being funny while being hilarious.
Yeah.
But this is true of, in general, I've been a long proponent of the theory of like comedy works best with boundaries. And I think that there's a certain inevitable demise that comes along with any time a comedian or comedic director or an actor gets too popular and they start to like be allowed to do whatever they want. At what point it's like, okay, cool. Now you're so broad and so big and so non-specific as to be like having a producer or a censor or, you know, a studio say like, hey, you have to cut that scene and then go, okay, what if we just make it if we just tighten it up? Like, that's pushing against boundaries is funny. But, like, do whatever you want is boring.
Yeah, because they inevitably will indulge.
Yeah.
Which this should have worked. This movie should have worked.
Should it have?
Because, well, for one reason. Because you're getting Leslie Nielsen, who is the Zucker brothers' golden child. And this is at the tail end of the Zucker brothers' insane reign in comedy. Starting with Airplane through Top Secret through all the Naked Gun movies.
Yeah.
Hot Shots with Jim Abrams. Like between both Zuckers and Abrams, you've got the guy who did a bunch of their stuff with Mel Brooks, who's this iconic spoof parody director as well.
Yeah, but the thing is Mel Brooks didn't used to be big, broad comedy. Like, there were big, broad scenes, definitely. There are moments where it's like, but like, it used to be like, those moments stood out.
Tight bits.
Yeah, right.
It was like his own Marx Brothers.
Right, exactly.
He knew how to play wordplay and then...
It used to be 90% Marx and like 10% Stooges.
Yeah.
And by Dracula Dead and Loving It, it's like 99% Stooges.
Yeah.
But like the Joe Besser version?
Yeah. And it's also...
And 1% Ace Ventura.
I stand by, and I love Leslie Nielsen. I think he was terrible casting for it. Because I think, like...
Who do you get? Who's a serious Dracula?
I would have put Gene Wilder in it. I think it would have been weird, and I think it would have been, like, a different feeling, but, like, the thing is, I wouldn't have had a funny Dracula at all. I would have had a very serious, scary Dracula, and had everything else around him be weird.
Yeah.
And like he's just trying to be an effective villain while everyone else is like being wacky, way funnier than like Dracula's funny and everybody else is serious.
Tickled should not be the only emotion that you feel.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, look at Cabin in the Woods.
Right, exactly.
Wait,
Hilarious.
Yeah,
Well, hilarious,
there are
but
funny,
also scary.
It's
or
funny?
Evil
And-
Dead. Evil Dead is
Evil
like
Dead, sure.
funny, scary. And it's like, oh, that's weird, but also like, I'm tense. You know what I mean? And
right.
there's no threat from Leslie Nielsen at all.
Interesting. Right. All right, so it's not Dracula Dead and Loving.
No. Now let's move back to 1993's Robin Hood Men in Tights. You have your hand up like you're going to witness right
Like
now.
you are testifying.
I want to make a strong case for Robin Hood Men in Tights.
As best?
Really?
No, not as best, but
Okay.
just as like,
You want to defend it as a piece of
I
comedy.
like Robin Hood Men in Tights.
I think of, and this might get me in trouble, but of Spaceballs, Robin Hood Men in Tights, and Dracula Dead and Loving It, Robin Hood Men in Tights is head and shoulders above the other two, to me. And here's why. One, Carrie Elwes is incredible, because here's why it's great casting. You might actually cast him as Robin Hood in something,
course.
right?
Okay.
And so like that's why on its surface you could like scan across a TV and see 8 frames of Robin Hood Men in Tights and think it is an actual Robin Hood movie. That said, I also think that there are a really good balance of very dumb jokes and somewhere I'm like, wow, that's really weird and funny. The moment of, hey, Blinken. Did you just say Abe Lincoln? No, I said, hey, Blinken. Why would I say Abe Lincoln? It's so funny to me. Basically, everything Blinken does is hilarious in that. And the moment when
Was it Dave Chappelle that played Blinken?
No, he played a Chew.
A Chew.
Yeah.
I forget the name of the actor who
Chew.
played.
That's right. A Sneeze was his
like,
brother.
I think it
Yeah,
was Mark
his dad.
Blankenfield was the guy.
And when Blinken is in the watchtower and they're like, what are you doing? He goes, I'm guessing. I guess no one's coming.
That's right. A blind man in a watchtower.
Right. That's so funny. And like, just in general, like, and then you also have like Tracy Ullman, who was incredible in that as Latrine. And you get like those weird dumb jokes of like Latrine is like, well, we changed it when we moved and it was, you know, a poop house, but it didn't say poop. She says it's a dirty word.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that's really dumb, but funny. It's funny.
It had a bit of a Muppet Show sensibility to it.
It is.
With a little bit of a slightly naughtier.
So that's why my case for it is this. I think it was the first Mel Brooks movie I was introduced to.
Okay.
And I remember watching it and thinking, well, if they're all like this, it's great. Because I was like 10 or something, way too young to be watching movies like Mel Brooks movies. But like I was watching them thinking like, yeah, this is perfect. Because I think that Robin Hood Men in Tights, for the time, really captured the things that I think audiences were looking for in parody and spoof at that point. What it actually reminds me a lot of is Basketball. Like, I think it has a lot of the same, like, very serious moments with funny elements in them. Kind of feeling of, like, there's a story to it. There's a dramatic arc. There's, like, characters falling in love, but also, like, people farting themselves to death.
Right.
And you're like, okay.
It's like Young Doctors in Love, if you ever saw that movie. A serious scene happening in the foreground while a little person tries to hang up a telephone in the background. And it is ridiculous.
Yeah, but, like, that is like, okay, it's clever, but not, like, give this man the Pulitzer, or give him a Tony or an Emmy.
Which, we'll get to that when we talk about Blazing Saddles.
It definitely suffers from not being one of his earlier films.
Yeah,
and it's really neat to watch it now and see Dave Chappelle before he was renowned Dave Chappelle. Not that he wasn't a great stand-up then, but at the same time, there's something about white Jewish guys writing jokes for black people that's not okay. And there, as to my knowledge, was no Richard Pryor that acted as a shield.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was like, here's what Mel Brooks thinks hip hop
white
culture
men
is.
can't jump, which was literally one of his
I
jokes.
gotta pump my high top.
Yeah, the backwards hat.
Although I will say, like, I did like the Blazing Saddles. It worked in Blazing Saddles. It's such a good, like,
But that is a different.
Nailed it. But it's also, if you ever get a chance, listen to the director's commentary of Robin Hood Men in Tights. Half of it is Mel Brooks like, this joke was, it's a good joke. Like, even he's not crazy about it.
Spaceballs, his
Mm-hmm.
Spaceballs track, and it is ridiculous. He introduces Daphne Zuniga like Is that how you say her name? Zuniga?
Yeah,
Zuniga?
I think so, yeah.
He introduces her like 3 times, like, oh, lovely woman, Daphne, what is her name? Zuniga, Daphne, she's amazing. She comes on screen 10 minutes later. Oh, this actress, what was her name? Daphne Zuniga. And I thought, oh God, I hope he's doing a bit, because he might actually be as old as he once played at this
he's
point.
a 2,000-year-old man before Rio.
It's happened.
He has reached that point.
So Spaceballs does have something. If we're going to talk about the Poor trilogy, let's call it the Poor trilogy. That's kind of
Wait a minute now.
It has John Candy in it.
So are we moving on from? We're going to move on from Robin Hood Men in Tights to Spaceballs.
I will say, Robin Hood Men in Tights, I would recommend to people to watch.
Yes,
where it's like,
okay.
I Drag Dead and Loving It. You can skip and pretend it never existed,
but you have to. You can have a general understanding of Robin Hood, but you really have to have seen the Kevin Costner one to get the majority of those jokes. And you are the right age, as are we, to have had that come out at a time when it was supposed to be a blockbuster. 3 years after,
right? 92 was the Costner. Yeah,
and I don't hate that one. It's fine. Morgan Freeman's great in it. But it's got Alan Rickman in it. It's got a really strong cast. But this was
Christian
made.
Slater throwing knives.
Also, I think that came out in 91 and this came out 2 years after.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it was
It was a direct spoof.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, but less, I think what I liked about it, here's the thing. It is a direct spoof. They lift like 80% of the references are Prince of Thieves.
Yeah.
But, and I think that this is, we'll talk about this more when you do the other movies. Robin Hood Men in Tights of the latter ones, I think is the one that most, like, if you remove all the gags, there's still a story in there. There's still, it's not as tight as when you get to like Young Frankenstein and Producers or whatever, but like, they still tell the Robin Hood story. It's what it reminds me a lot of is like the Reduced Theater Company. I think that's it. Who does
complete Shakespeare Company.
Yeah, who does Shakespeare Abridged.
Absolutely.
It feels like that. Like they're telling the story of Robin Hood. There's just a lot of jokes piled on top of it.
Right. But you don't feel that way with Spaceballs is very close to Star Wars. Enough, but it's really sci-fi in general. So there's some Star Trek. There's the great alien. I mean, that alien moment.
Let me tell you why it's different.
Please tell me.
I actually think that in the Spaceballs circumstance, it's too much of a mishmash where it's like 50% Star Wars, 50% everything else. Okay. To the point where it's like you should have just done a sci-fi spoof or just done a Star Wars spoof, but instead it's like your whole story starts to go to a point where you even reference like, yep, it's all out of hand now, but not in the fun blazing saddles way, but more in the like, I didn't think of a way to end this.
See, I think that this movie to me has a special place because this was my introduction to Mel Brooks. I think we all have that movie that was our introduction to him, and I watched this movie religiously as a child. But I understand what you're saying, that there's a lot of different influences on it. I think that it's worth noting, too, that it came out well after Star Wars did.
Yeah.
So he worked on this for a while, putting this together. And, or he, just took from a decade's worth of material. That movie was a hit for him. So the studio, assuming it could have gone, if it was only a couple of years later that he made Men in Tights, it's like, oh, that was good. You did a good spoof movie. Do another spoof movie. What's out now? That Robin Hood movie. That's a big hit. Do a Robin Hood movie.
I think
so. It's the difference between having a big chunk of time to write this parody as it is to make a parody of this one movie that's popular now.
Yeah, I mean, Spaceballs does suffer from being made 4 years after Return of the Jedi, so there had been no Star Wars outside of like the Droids animated series and Battle for Endor, like TV movies. Star Wars was not new or hip. It was just part of culture that we accepted. So he wasn't, like Young Frankenstein is about the Frankenstein story, which gets told over and over again and just always exists. Star Wars are a finite 3 films that we all sort of accepted as canon at that point. And even Alien hadn't been around for 8 years. There were just a lot of the references in that are way too old. But there are great bits. Rick Moranis is great in it.
Rick Moranis is great. But I think that the movie I would most closely compare in the rest of his canon would be High Anxiety.
Okay.
But the difference is, in High Anxiety, it's like a spoof love letter to Hitchcock.
Yes.
Where in Spaceballs, I feel like he's making fun of sci-fi a lot.
Like he's not actually a fan of it.
I think I'm not going to say he's not a fan of it so much as he's like, I don't know, aliens, it's dumb. Like Barf, he named the character Barf, and it's like
Bartholomew.
That's a mean. Like he's calling. He made a Wookiee-like character. Was like, boy, his name is Barf. And Pizza the Hut. That's mean.
Pizza the Hut is funny.
It's funny,
Pizza
but
the
he's
Hut is
making
hilarious.
fun of
They're
that.
all so good. The Vinny, like the weird mafia Max Headroom that was in it.
His
Vinny.
Pizza's gonna call out for you. Still don't know what that means.
No.
Still not a great threat.
No, not a great joke either.
But I just feel like there's and not in a bad. I don't mean this like he hates Star Wars, but just more in like it felt like he was writing a parody rather than a spoof homage.
Right.
Like I feel like High Anxiety is like I have to figure out a way to make a Hitchcock movie because I just love Hitchcock so much.
Yes.
Versus, well, Star Wars seems popular. Maybe I could do a Star Wars thing.
Right.
And Hitchcock made a ton of different, even though there was a lot of suspense and intrigue, he made a ton of different types of films over a 30+ year career. So,
I'm trying to remember.
By the way, we skipped Life Stinks, which is
I was just going to say, there was one between these two. Life Stinks is not really worth talking about.
No, that's the one he made with his wife, right? Like he and his wife.
That's To Be or Not to Be.
Yes,
but he did not direct that. They just starred in a remake of the Jack Benny film. Life Stinks. He is a millionaire who makes a bet with another millionaire that he can live as a homeless man for 2 weeks or something like that.
Was it before or after Trading Spaces?
It was after. Trading Spaces was 83.
Okay, so it was long after.
Yeah.
Long after.
The only thing I remember from that terrible movie
Slap fight
is a slap fight
with a bum.
And I remember him having a piece of corn on their face and him saying, you have a little piece of corn on your face. And the guy moving it. And then when it cut back to him, it was in a totally random different spot on his face.
Which
and
he
they
then
did this
stole
bit
for Robin Hood.
Yeah. Or was that Robin Hood that I'm thinking of?
He did that with the mole, where he's like,
he had the
I
mole
have a
moving
mole,
around.
which is a great bit.
Which is a really ridiculous bit. No, this was corn in Life Stinks. That movie is not good.
Yeah, I don't even think we need to really talk about it.
No.
I don't think there's anybody, including Mel Brooks, who would put this up as one of his best movies.
Fair enough.
Also, there is a bum who dies, and he's somehow cremated, so they go to dump his ashes over his favorite barrel fire or whatever, and when they throw it out, the wind blows it back in their faces, and that is the big... I remember reading a review of it when it came out. They were like, thank goodness for this one moment of Mel Brooks magic when a dead person's ashes are blown back into everyone's face.
It makes me wonder if you look the timeline wise, if he did like Spaceballs and he was like, I'm not fulfilled by the, because Life Stinks is much more realistic and less slapsticky and jokey, right?
It still has a lot of weird jokes, but it doesn't have
he has one
parody
character
element.
that has an arc through the whole thing.
It's story based, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe that was like his like, I don't have to just do parodies. I can make funny movies.
And then everyone went, no, you can't.
Well, it was just so uninspired.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Is like, I want to be clear. I love Mel Brooks. And I don't know if I've stated this. Like, he's my favorite director, like comedian. Like, I take a lot of comedy inspiration from him. But I also think that as you look through his canon, it's a really good example of like, when it comes to genius unforced is genius.
Mm-hmm.
Genius forced is mediocre.
Yeah.
And like, even his mediocre ain't terrible. That's why I love Robin Hood and Spaceballs. And there are still moments in Dracula Dead and Loving It where I'm like, this is funny. Mm-hmm. But like, his movies where it's like, no, this was him, like, High Anxiety, Blazing Saddles, these movies where it's like, I have to make this. That's funny. That's what's good.
Yeah.
And just the thing is, he made like 6 really good movies, but like 13 movies total, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think we're getting our next movie that we have on this list going backwards in time is, in my opinion, the first in our list, last of his, except for Spaceballs, which is in my heart as a wonderful movie, of his masterpieces.
Mm-hmm.
History of the World Part 1 from the year 1981 is a masterpiece of a movie.
It is, and the best thing about it is it plays like a really good sketch show.
Yeah.
Like,
that covers the entire history of the world.
Yep.
Up to the 20th century.
Because I think if they had tried to make it a through line story with like a time machine or something, would have been terrible.
Yeah.
But their ability to literally just like, and that's done. And now we're in the
it's a
Spanish
little
Inquisition.
like Meaning of Life.
Yes.
Except
exactly.
it used the history of the world instead of the stages of life.
Yeah, it had a better through line to it because it's taking you through the literal history of the world. So
And callbacks even.
yeah,
I mean,
so
we
you
had some
got a
great
guy
callbacks.
who was in maybe the greatest writer's room of all time, which is the Sid Caesar show.
Yep.
So he knows how to write short form sketches. Not that he isn't able to write films, but this plays to one of his original strengths. And I think it's a really strong movie all the way through. I don't think it's his best.
No, but I do think it highlights his ability to be funny. It's
Yes.
the one where it's most like, here's a vehicle to just like write a scene and then maybe it's 3 seconds long.
Yeah.
But it's
The
funny.
Lord has given me these 15, drops one, 10 commandments.
That's
the whole scene.
iconic. That's iconic, that
Yes.
moment. But then you also get like the super extended French Revolution, It's Good to Be the King.
Yeah, like a whole long story.
Yeah, and my theory is like he started to write a French Revolution movie and he was like, well, I've got 20 minutes. That's all I got.
Yeah, but there's a lot, and then there's the ancient Rome scene is great like that. Like
Yes,
they're all
Gregory Hines.
Yes.
It is. There's so many. I think that movie is a perfect combination of Mel Brooks at his sketch best and at his I'm going to write characters that you care about through line best.
And just little. I also think I think it's Cloris Leachman who's the revolutionary woman.
Yes.
And she says like, let's end this meeting on a high note. And it's dumb, but it's clever dumb where it makes you laugh and go, stupid. Right? Like those are some of my
Or
favorite.
the waiter at the Last Supper.
Right.
Jesus. What? Yes. What? What? Jesus. Yes. These are ridiculous.
It's so dumb, but it's dumb in like man, I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
That was so dumb.
It is dumb and clever at the same time.
Yeah.
I love in Ancient Rome where when Mel Brooks' friend says, "You got to be nuts, NVTS nuts."
Yeah.
It's such a dumb, perfect joke.
Or this one you're going to have to bleep me for. When they walk past Oedipus and he's blind and begging, "Give to Oedipus!" And Gregory Hines looks at him and goes, "Oedipus, what's up, motherfucker?"
That's so good.
It's so ridiculous. But you earn ridiculousness if you are doing a movie about history that requires you to have done some homework.
Well, and
So I think that the fact that he's like, Mel Brooks clearly did his homework for this movie, we're going to allow him to make a joke like NVTS nuts.
Well, and plus, when you watch the Spanish Inquisition,
Oh my
God.
God.
What a show.
And you have
Brilliant.
Brooks playing Takamata
Yeah.
and singing a really upbeat jazzy number about torturing the Jews. And you're just like,
Yes.
this is like Mel Brooks, like, hey, watch what I can do.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing is that scene is Mel Brooks showing off.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is start to finish, let me show you what I can do when I'm on. Because that's him, acting it, writing it, everything. Nothing is working. Send in the nuns. It's just, I think that's the standout scene for me that is Hamilton level clever for me. I don't know anybody else that could pull. That's the Dead Parrot sketch of that. That's the thing of hey, do you want to see why he's a genius?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a scene about the Inquisition that's funny as all get out. He made the Spanish Inquisition a toe-tapping 11 o'clock number. And who else? Who else could walk that balance and be I actually don't think this is offensive. I think it's just funny.
Isn't that part of what he does, and especially as we start moving backwards into his greater films, is taking things that are uncomfortable or politically incorrect or just incorrect in general, flat out, and finding something funny in them, finding something to satire, something to parody. I mean, even Jews in space. Nobody else can do that.
Jews in space!
So good. Well, and that's the thing.
Hitler on Ice? All that stuff at the end.
Hitler on Ice, I forgot.
What Mel Brooks is really good at is making it so it's hard for you to explain to someone why they should watch something and have them go, this sounds really offensive. And you're like, no, trust me, he does it in such a way. That's fine. And like, I feel like History of the World is not his best movie, but it contains some of like my favorite writing that he did.
Yes.
The thing with the woman's father, where he's been in prison so long that he's like out of it, and he's going around to all the pets and like releasing these clearly dead animals.
Yes.
It's just so weird and funny to me.
Yeah.
It's like he's like, the weirdest one is he picks up the dead cat and says, now to invent the catapult, and swings the cat around and throws it. And you're just like, okay, cool. I don't know why this is great, but it is.
Oh my God.
I think it's good. This is a good time to say that I think what we should do is bring 3 movies to the finals.
Okay.
I think we probably all know what 3 movies they'll be. Maybe we have some squabbles
This
about
one would
one
go
or
to
two.
the finals for me.
All right. You think that one? So we'll put a hold on that for
We'll
now.
put a hold.
Soft
Okay.
hold.
All right.
Soft hold.
Should we take a commercial?
Do you want to take a commercial?
Let's take a commercial
All right,
because
fine.
we've moved through the lesser films into one of the heavy hitters.
Yes.
Now we're going to get into the golden age.
We're in the home stretch. But first, let's hear about some of the golden podcasts on the Maximum Fun Network.
Hello, Internet. I'm your husband host, Travis McElroy.
And I'm your wife host, Teresa McElroy.
And together we present Schmanners.
It's extraordinary etiquette.
For ordinary occasions.
We explain the historical significance of everyday etiquette topics, then answer your questions relating to modern life.
So join us weekly on MaximumFun.org or wherever podcasts are found.
No RSVP required.
Check out Schmanners.
Schmanners. Get it?
Hi, everybody. I'm Justin McElroy.
I'm Travis McElroy.
And I'm Griffin McElroy, and this is our serious promo. No horsing around, you two.
If you like just 3 gentlemen being adults about topics and giving advice for them, to them, My Brother, Me is the podcast for you serious-minded adults.
No monkey shines, no falderall.
Hey, let me ask you a question. How sophisticated is your palate?
You like Merlot?
Our show is basically like the Merlot and dark chocolate of podcasts.
You gotta be grown up to like them.
Our podcast is toilet wine.
Listen to the Toilet Line of Podcasts every Monday right here at MaximumFun.org.
And we're back. And
High anxiety. My favorite unappreciated joke of that film is he says, "Hey, anxiety," and it's so weird. I don't know why it's funny to me, but it really is. Hey, anxiety. I don't know why. So funny to me.
yeah, this is one that actually has more of a plot to it. There is a thriller.
Definitely.
It is a thriller that in turn
This is the Hitchcock parody.
Yes.
10 different films at least.
Mm-hmm.
My 2 favorites are Psycho and The Birds. The Birds, of course, crap all over them.
I'll tell you, I was never into Hitchcock growing up, and I watched this movie a lot. This is one of my favorites, and so I watched this one a lot. And only recently, like 2 or 3 years ago, did I go kind of like on a Hitchcock bender. And in like a month, I watched like 12 different Hitchcock films, and it was amazing to me how many times I was like, "Oh, like
Now
from
you
My
get it.
Anxiety."
So you were finding the this was the first time you were seeing what was parody.
Yeah.
Ah.
And so to keep that in mind, like once again, a good parody. I didn't know the source material, and I still loved the movie.
Yes.
Like that's a good parody.
But you knew watching the Psycho scene where the bellhop who if you have not seen High Anxiety.
I have
to be
not
fair.
seen High Anxiety.
So in this film there's a bellhop who Mel Brooks asks to get him a paper repeatedly, and the bellhop gets more and more frustrated. So later on,
Who plays the bellhop?
oh man,
I don't know.
I can't
Running of
remember.
note.
It is like a good character actor.
Yeah, but not somebody that you'd be like,
Yeah.
Like, oh, Clint Howard.
Yeah.
Not one of those.
Right. So he's taking a shower, Mel Brooks is, and the bellhop comes in and pulls the curtain aside like in Psycho and starts smacking him with the paper, but stabbing him as if it is the knife in Psycho. And goes, "Here's your paper! Here's your paper!" And the ink is swirling down the drain like the blood.
Of course.
and then it zooms in on Brooks' face
Yes.
and says, "Well, he's not getting a tip."
Yes.
So great. And this is the first we've hit with Madeline Kahn in it, right?
No,
History of the World.
Because she's in.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
And she's
No,
the
no,
Emperor's
no,
wife.
no,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love Madeline
And
Kahn
Cloris
so much.
Leachman.
Cloris
His
Leachman.
pointed
bullpen is amazing.
boobs.
From what I understand, what
Yes.
I remember reading is that Cloris Leachman in High Anxiety came in and sat down in the makeup chamber and just started doodling on her face and like drew in the unibrow and like drew in like a little bit of mustache hair and like asked for the wart and then went up to Mel Brooks and was like, this is how I'm going to look in the movie. And Mel Brooks was like, okay, cool. But that was all her. And like I think she has a hump in the movie or something where she was like, this is me. This is how I look in this movie. And it's like, okay, cool.
Brilliant.
Cloris Leachman, I will also say, she's in she's in the American God series.
Mm-hmm.
She's so great.
Yes.
I think that she is maybe one of the most, and not underappreciated because there are people who love her very much and she's very appreciated. I look back over her career and I'm like, when did she ever like hit? Why isn't she like Glenn Close or Meryl Streep? And I don't know why.
But because she's one of those people, she's like a Phil Hartman. Phil Hartman never would have been a marquee star, but nobody doubts how brilliant he is.
Yeah.
And he was, I mean, in SNL, he was all over the place. And in films in which he appeared, he was great. He was glue, which she was as well. She did great character work. You can't imagine the films that she's in. You can't imagine them without her. It's especially those who are late do not get fruit cup. My parents would say all the time. That was a household phrase in the Loveland household.
And I remember, let's see, I'm just trying to think of one of my favorite scenes from High Anxiety. There's a point where they are filming up through a glass table.
Yeah.
But the table is full of dishes. So they have to like keep moving. And the camera, every time they move a cup, the camera's like trying to find a gap. And
that is the most Alfred Hitchcock bit that they could possibly do.
But then eventually, like, the actors are clear, like, the characters start to, like, mess with the camera. I almost cursed. The actors, like, you could see them, like, and they're trying to, like, beat the camera and everything. And it's and there's, like, a moment where he does the tight pan in, the zoom in, that usually you then fade through the window and you're in the room, and it keeps zooming in closer and closer and closer and closer, and then it breaks the glass, and everybody turns and looks at the window, and the camera backs away.
Yes.
It's so good.
There's also a great sequence in the beginning. Harvey Korman is running a mental hospital, and he has a patient who he has convinced the patient is afraid of werewolves. So he's in to the other professionals talking about how insane he is, but meanwhile he's like shooting stones in the back of his neck and putting in fangs and frightening him when nobody's looking.
Yeah, that's their plan, is if we keep people here, they're paying to be here.
Yes.
But if we cure them, they get to go home and we don't get paid for it
So
anymore.
they keep the game of the movie is that they are okay.
Yeah, they're trying to convince Dr. Richard Thorndike, who is Mel Brooks' character, that all these people, and Madeline Kahn's father, who is I'm trying to remember the industrialist, and it's a very Alfred Hitchcock. They keep saying his name is like, I can't remember the character's name, but they're like, Stephen Jenkins, the industrialist?
Yes.
And they always append the title to the end, and it's like, God, that's so like noir detective movie of everything. It's like, wait,
Here is who this person is.
Yeah, Susan Jenkins, the philanthropist, and it's always like, that's how you remember what character we're talking about.
Yeah, that's how you remember. It's like Professor Plum, Colonel Mustard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so Richard's his was a mentor who also works at the thing is named Dr. Lil Oldman.
Is he a little old man?
Yeah, he's the guy who does the voice of Scrooge McDuck, or no, of the not Scrooge McDuck, the like inventor duck in old Donald Duck
Professor
cartoons.
Von Drake.
Yeah, he's that guy.
Paul Frees?
I think so.
Oh.
Or either that or they just have the most similar voice in this movie and that. But
Yeah.
he has this,
I'd like to see this just to see what Paul Frees looks like, because he's an iconic
now I have to
voice.
look.
Oh,
But
he has
he
a
has-
walrus mustache.
He
It's
has a
brilliant.
really great scene where he says to him, I basically tells Richard, like, I think you need to, like, go back under care and I'll treat you. And Richard starts to say, like, I don't think that's Nessa. And he goes, don't you tell me what's Nessa. I'll tell you what's Nessa.
Oh, yes. That's right. Another thing
So
that made
good.
that was like a really, I guess, banner film in the Loveland household, because my mother would say, it's not Nessa right now. She
Wow.
would pull stuff from that film. It's worth watching. I would not put it in. If we were doing a Final Four, I would put it in the Final Four maybe, or History of the World?
It might be my final 3.
Really?
Because I think, at least as far as cinematically and like story-wise, it's like maybe second strongest for me. Of just like, once again, remove all the bits. There's some really good acting.
Why
There's
do
some
you
really
keep
good
wanting
story.
to take the bits out of these Mel Brooks movies? They're one of the best parts of them.
No, very much so. But that's why I'm looking at it as like, as a movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
As a story. Tell me a story.
Exactly. And that's the thing is, he's actually, that's what I love about Mel Brooks. And like, if somebody had only ever seen Dracula Dead and loving it, I think it would be really hard to convince them of this, of like, he's also a really good storyteller. And that's the thing, man. Listen to 2,000-Year-Old Man and like, his things that he did with Carl Reiner that weren't 2,000-Year-Old Man, but like, where he's just kind of riffing with him and like building a character and being funny. And it's like, oh yeah, this is a really funny character. But what's great about it is you're telling me this really weird story about this character, and you're really good at making me interested in these characters.
Right.
And so the jokes are funny, but the personality of the characters is what sells you on it. And so that's the thing, is I think he's at his strongest when it's like, okay, I wrote a script. It's amazing. It's great. The characters are great. They're interesting, and I really care about them, and I care about their relationship with each other. Now I'm going to make a second pass at it and add farts. And that's like, that's where his genius is. And like, and we're almost to Blazing Saddles, but in Blazing Saddles, you could remove all the jokes, and it's still an amazing movie.
Well, also in Blazing Saddles, what's brilliant is, and he does this a lot of times. I mean, sure, there are scenes with the real basest of jokes and meta sort of self-referential things, but when he's at his best, and in Blazing Saddles, I feel this way. He is, any joke in the movie can only come out of the person whose mouth it came out of.
Yes.
Right.
And I love that as a barometer of a good joke in a story.
I don't want to skip over a silent movie.
Yeah, silent movie is a very interesting meta film because it's a silent movie about a guy trying to make a silent movie in the 70s. It's Marty Feldman, Dom DeLuise, and Mel Brooks, but it has pretty much every single star of the day is in that movie. Burt Reynolds in 1976 was maybe as big of a star as you could get. He's in it. Marcel Marceau, the famous mime, is the only person who speaks in the entire film.
I think, here's the thing about silent movie. It is a very, very interesting movie to watch. It is, as you said, incredibly meta.
Yes.
Very interesting concept. It's not a great movie. I mean, it is very similar to like, it feels very Looney Tunes-esque. Like there's lots of very like slapstick.
You have to be though if you've got no.
Exactly. It
quipping.
really seemed like somebody said, well, yeah, Mel Brooks can make jokes, but can he do physical comedy? And Mel Brooks said, tell you what, I'll make a movie with no jokes and it'll still be funny. And it is funny.
Yeah.
It's just a homework experiment.
Yeah, it really, the whole thing feels like somebody like challenged, like Phineas Fogg was challenged to make a silent movie. And he wants to prove that he can do it. And he did. But like.
That's why it has that famous elephant riding scene.
Yes, exactly. But it really does feel like he went, man, I love Buster Keaton. Man, I love Chaplin. I would like to do something like that. Okay, cool. Here's money. Go make that.
Yeah.
And it's fine. But like.
Does this go back to that unrestrained thing?
Yeah, a little bit, but it also feels like basically what it is start to finish just swinging from vine to vine of like sight gag, physical humor.
Yes.
And it's like, because really all it is they're trying to make a movie.
Yeah.
The end. It's not reinventing
simple but impossible
storytelling.
task. It's
You could not make that film today. I've said a lot because I've been thinking about it in the past couple of months.
Why couldn't you make that today?
Because the further we move forward in time, the longer old movies seem because the pacing was slower. And now to try and get somebody to invest in a 90-minute movie where nobody speaks would be incredibly difficult. I know the
artist won Best Picture.
I know the artist won Best Picture.
But it's heavily orchestrated.
It is heavily orchestrated. And this
You're
is
heavily orchestrated.
Let me illustrate this point to you.
You are.
Hey, boys.
Dare you?
Put your dukes down.
All right,
Let me illustrate this with the
All
next
right,
movie.
Pilgrim.
So next movie is Young Frankenstein, right?
Right.
Yes.
I went to like a movie theater, did a screening in Cincinnati where I lived. They did a screening of Young Frankenstein, and I went. I'm so excited. I've never seen Mel Brooks movie in theaters. I think that's true. I've only ever seen it on home video. And there are long moments where there's no noise. And it when you're sitting at home watching it, it doesn't stand out. But when you sit in a theater, you could hear everybody breathing and like drinking their sodas because it's just like somebody walking down a sidewalk and there's nothing being said.
What those
There's no
Universal
music.
movies were like.
But that's what I'm saying is like,
Yeah.
we are not trained for that anymore.
No.
And so
this
now,
was the 30s, the early 30s. These originals came out.
now I hear that and I like my shoulders start to rise up around my ears. I'm like, something needs to happen, please.
We've all been watching Michael Bay movies.
Well, honestly, yeah, I think it's all self-conscious, like subconscious, but like I can feel everybody start to lean forward, and it's like if you don't catch them, they're gonna fall out of their chairs and walk out of the theater.
Right.
And it mostly because now everything is so like people talk about like everybody's attention spans have gotten shorter. I don't think that's true. I think it's more like, do you like this? No. What about this? What about this? What about this? They're just throwing everything at the wall.
It's not the attention span, it's the number of choices.
Yeah, so because it's like, well, if we didn't get you with choice 1 through 99, we'll get you with 100.
Yeah.
And they're just so afraid that somebody might not like something that either they don't make a choice at all, or they make so many choices that you can't think about it. Whereas I think, especially Young Frankenstein makes like a few bold choices, and then they're like, deal with it. Like, it wasn't supposed to be black and white. It was supposed to be in color.
Really?
The
I did not know
studio
that.
wanted it in color.
The Broadway musical is in black and white, which I think is an amazing, amazing feat of makeup and costuming and design and lighting and set and all of that to make it in black and white.
Here's the other thing about Young Frankenstein. It was a much longer film. It was, I think they cut something like 30 or 40 minutes out of it in editing.
Yeah.
Because like they filmed and they were like, it was not working.
It's a great commentary track for that one as well.
The first cut just was not playing. And they went back through and gutted it and basically just tightened everything. And basically went through and like, do we need this? No. Do we need this? No. And by the time they were done, I think it's, I love Blazing Saddles, but Young Frankenstein for me is in the running for maybe one of the funniest movies ever. Best execution.
This performance by Gene Wilder and by Peter Boyle in this movie. Those two performances. All the performances
and Cloris Leachman.
And Cloris Leachman.
And Marty Feldman.
And Terry Garr.
Terry Garr,
Terry Garr was brilliant.
I also want to say, because I think, I love Mel Brooks a lot, but I think one of the things that always gets glossed over with Young Frankenstein was, it was Gene Wilder's concept. Gene Wilder went to Mel Brooks during Blazing Saddles and said, hey, I have an idea for a movie. Right. They wrote it together.
Yes.
And then it became a Mel Brooks, like Mel Brooks directed it, but Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks wrote it. And now everybody thinks of it as like a Mel Brooks movie, which it is. But
but it's as much a Gene Wilder
movie. If not conceptually, it was Gene Wilder's movie. And in fact, the putting on the Ritz scene, Mel Brooks originally went to cut. And Gene Wilder was the one who said, no, I think this is funny. And Mel Brooks made him work for it. And when Mel Brooks...
It's one of the most iconic
when Gene Wilder went back down, Mel Brooks famously responded like, I just wanted to see if you'd fight for it. Because like, it's a scene that very easily could not have worked.
Right.
Yeah. That like, Gene Wilder sells it and makes it work. But like, that whole movie is that way. If you would cast that with anyone else other than Gene Wilder, it would have been a pile of doo-doo, to quote the movie. Because like that movie, I think everybody's good in it, right?
Yes.
But it is a Gene Wilder vehicle.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so great in every part of it. I think if you want to see how great a comedic actor and just straight actor Gene Wilder was, watch the opening scene with him when he stabs himself in the leg. Because he's so upset that as the great grandson of Victor Frankenstein, he's changed his name. He has sworn off that quack, and he emphasizes a point with a scalpel he's holding by mistakenly stabbing his own leg. And the cool demeanor.
He just like closes his eyes and takes a breath.
He breathes through
so
it.
Good.
Instead of doing what Leslie Nielsen in Dracula Dead and Loving It would have done, which is cross his eyes and fart and scream. And then everybody would see his butt or wiener.
I also think that...
I don't think he pulled his wiener out in Dracula Dead and Loving It.
He could have. I wouldn't have been surprised. But I also want to say I love Madeline Klein, all of them. But I also think that like Marty Feldman gives a masterclass in that movie of broad, controlled, like broad but specific comedy. What it is, think of it this way. This is what I like to think of when I think of comedy, is what weapon are you using? And some people are fighting with a rapier, right? And it's these finesse, right? Very sharp strokes. But some people are fighting with a broadsword. And if you don't know better, you think like, well, with like a, three-handed claymore or whatever, you just swing hard. And if you hit, you win. It's like, no, it's really hard to swing a broadsword right so that you don't throw yourself off balance or you don't leave yourself open to attack.
Yes.
It's a whole art in and of itself. And Marty Feldman is teaching you like, hey, here's how you do broad comedy in control. Controlled broad,
He can make a thrust with a broadsword.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I ain't got no body. It's like a big joke that you totally believe this character is making in context and not just a reference or a funny bit, but like, no, that's that character. That's him. That's exactly what he do. It's the same way I was just watching Cheers, and it's the way I feel about Rhea Perlman in Cheers.
Oh, she's perfect on that show.
And I believe that it's a real character. Not just a big broad joke, but a real character who's really doing these things. That's like the grave digging. My favorite Gene Wilder scene in Young Frankenstein is when the cart gets out of control and crashes, and one of what will become Frankenstein's arms is hanging out, and he tucks it under himself and has a whole conversation with a policeman, pretending like it's his arm, and like will swing it around him like he's like messing with the fingertips and the nails and he's chalking,
blowing on it because it's cold.
And everything he's doing is the perfect example of something that I think is really tough, which is how to lie. On stage, how to lie in a movie so that we, the audience, know you're lying, but the person believably believes you. And everything he's doing is precise to the point of absurdity.
Yes.
It's like very like, It's like, that's a dead man's hand. And I know that.
I love just a small shout out to Kenneth Mars as the constable from the town who has a wooden arm that he's constantly like he emphasizes, and then we're gonna go to the town, and then he just moves it like that. He's not in the film much, but the time he is in it, he's so funny, so good.
And this is Ken Burns.
This is Ken Burns
Ken
narrating
Burns of documentary fame.
Yes.
No, what's
my
the name?
dearest brother. It's Kenneth Mars.
Kenneth Mars.
Yes.
The film, Peter Boyle is amazing, and the Gene Hackman scene, like that's the thing, start to finish.
I almost forgot about
Here's
that.
the thing about Young Frankenstein that actually makes it in the running for me to the point where like I'm still thinking as far as best movie.
Yes.
Not movie I like the best, but which one do I think is the best?
Right.
I don't know that there's a single moment in Young Frankenstein that I'm like, well, that's where it falls flat. But they pick it back up in the next scene.
Right.
I think because they edited it so ruthlessly that there is no fat. It is lean.
Yeah.
It is every moment is like tight. And like you're getting from moment to moment so efficiently and so quickly that you're like, no, you can sit down and watch a 90-minute movie and it finishes and you're like, I'd watch that again.
Yeah.
Like it
right
moves, it really cooks. And so like there's so many scenes in it and all of them work.
Yes. And it ends well. So let's talk about Blazing Saddles.
Yeah.
Which I know.
Speaking of
you
moving
love.
things along efficiently.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that Blazing Saddles, the first 2/3, I'd put up against any comedy movie in history. I do think the last act doesn't live up to the two before it.
Really?
I don't think it isn't funny.
Why do you think that?
Because I think it gets a little too meta. Like they had a
let me
story
tell you
to
why
tell.
you're wrong, Hal.
Please.
Yeah, I want to hear
that's the
this,
whole point
and
of
so
this
that I can
podcast.
agree with it.
I would agree with you if the ending of Spaceballs didn't exist, which allows me to go like, oh no, that's when it's bad. This is when it's, there's gotta be people who are mad because they love Spaceballs. But the out of control runaway, like,
Those people are
and
wrong.
there's a bear in the thing. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
so this is nothing. The Blazing Saddles thing, I think because it's so on the rails for the first 2/3, that when it goes off the rails, it's like, yeah, okay. All right.
It is. I think it's one of the perfect movie endings.
Because then, if they didn't bring it back to where it is, yeah, I actually think it's one of my favorite weird meta swings of like, we're making a movie and you kind of like, oh, okay. Well, actually, I get it.
And the heroes wind up in the movie theater watching how their movie
but
ends
then
happily.
they finish the movie and you're like,
Yeah.
wait, hold on. What movie am I in? What is this part? Is this
Yeah.
because then Gene Wilder's eating movie theater popcorn in the last scene, like when Levon Little walks around and he's sort of like, he has the popcorn that he had in the movie. What movie is this? We're in the Matrix. None of this is real.
You like that confusion.
I love that.
I know it's by design. And I'm not saying it's poor. I just love the first 2/3 so much. And while that last third, I don't think it's poorly done, but it just doesn't.
There is something lazy about the last third.
That's
where
the thing.
the idea is the fact that they have the idea of we're going to make and paint a facade version of the town. Like, that is a Deus Ex Machina bit of lunacy.
That is literally almost straight out of like the Magnificent Seven.
Yeah.
Like that idea of like, and they do it in, Three Amigos.
Right.
Where it's like, well, we made a bunch of costumes. And like, that's such, I think, here's why I love that and I love the off the rails studio stuff is like throughout that, the runner remains the same of like, they're still fighting the bad guys. The fight is still the same. They have a showdown, a gunfight. The bad guys running off. Mm-hmm. They just made the setting unique to this movie. Right. Because you're not going to see that in Magnificent Seven. You're not going to see that
You're not going to see him on Hollywood
in Lonesome
Boulevard.
Dove. Exactly. And so this idea of like, no. You could keep almost all the dialogue the same as far as like, go for your gun. Let's settle this like men, right? Mm-hmm. Except it's happening in front of like, with all the handprints and stuff in front of the Chinese theater. Mm-hmm. Like, they basically said like, okay, well, we could just film this as a shootout in front of the saloon, in front of Howard Johnson's, saloon. But instead, we just put it on Hollywood Boulevard. Yeah. And it's weird because it's unique to this movie, but the scene's the same.
I'd like to point out that we are arguing about the very end of this movie.
This is true.
Because the first 2/3, I mean, it sounds like Travis and I are both huge fans of it all the way through. Mm-hmm. Hal, you have some issues with the very end.
Yes.
But
which I understand.
there is
I'm not
no
gonna say
argument.
are off base.
Right, I understand.
But what I see as a weakness, you see as a strength.
Right.
I see as the creativity that's like, hey, I'm going to control this spiral.
But there is no argument that the bulk of this movie is it is perfect.
Can I tell you
in the comedy world, this movie is the gold standard of subversive, pointed satire, hilarious, ridiculous parody, slapstick bits. It is an absolutely perfect comedy instruction manual of a movie.
Let me tell you first what makes me mad in the world in general. And specifically about Blazing Saddles. There are people who have never seen it, know nothing about it, who will say to you like, isn't that movie racist?
Yes.
And that makes me so mad because that couldn't be more opposite than the whole point of the movie, in which it's like, no. The whole thing is about how dumb racists
The movie
are.
says terrible racist things out of the mouths of characters that you are supposed to think are
the whole point
most ridiculous.
Yeah, the dumbest characters say
people
the worst
you like
things.
are the people that like the sheriff. Like that's
yes.
And here's my favorite thing about Blazing Saddles that almost wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
The buddy comedy that exists within the movie with Cleavon Little and Gene Wilder may be my favorite buddy comedy ever.
It's a brilliant pair.
And let me tell you why it's great and why I think it's very forward thinking that like makes me very happy. They love each other. Mm-hmm. Like they make physical contact with each other. There's no gay panic that exists whatsoever between them. Like they call each other baby and like they're like, talking very close to each other and they're very intimate with each other without that being the joke. Like they ride off into the sunset together and like they're best friends without any artifice or any like, oh, hey, like accidental touching and then we're gonna like, oh yeah, but we're
not like
cool
Bill
bros.
and Ted.
Right. Yeah. Like it's very much like, no, they're just very sweet to each other. And I actually have I have very little art in my house. I have a framed thing of the like, you have to remember, these are the common clay of the New West, morons. Because it's this very, very sweet moment between Jim and Bart. Yeah. Where it's just like, hey, it's gonna be okay. Like, don't worry about that. Like, if you take the actual point of it, not the words he's saying, but the point of like, they don't know who you are. Mm-hmm. They're idiots. You're great. Don't worry about them. You're great. Don't listen to them. It's like, oh, my heart. It makes me happy.
It's a beautiful relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
And he almost wasn't in the movie. Like
who was going to play that role? Was it going to
they
be
offered it to a lot of different people. They offered
Richard Pryor, who wrote the script with Mel Brooks,
and actually Mel Brooks wanted him to play Bart, but the studio was like, nope, he's far too controversial. But Gene Wilder wanted to play it, and Mel Brooks was like, no, we need like a craggy faced, like old, washed up guy. Mm-hmm. And they originally went to the Duke. They went to John Wayne,
yeah.
And John Wayne was like, this is hilarious. I can't do this. It doesn't work with my image. This is not my thing. I'm trying to remember the other names. There was another dude who was supposed to do it who like called Mel Brooks like a month before shooting was supposed to start. It's like, hey, I'm basically blind. I can't ride a horse anymore. And like, so then they had to recast it. So then the guy they had, whose name I wish I could remember, day one of shooting, the scene where he hangs upside down in the jail cell, he hung upside down and just started throwing up.
Oh, it was Eric Stoltz. It was another job that he lost.
I heard about this. This was the guy who he was hungover or drunk
I don't remember what it was, but
on
like
his first day, and they were like, they fired him.
And it was like, yeah, we can't do it. And so Gene Wilder had actually read the script during producers and be like, I want to play this. Mel Brooks was like, no. And then Mel Brooks called him and was like, hey, can you come do it? And he was there half a day later, and he had it all memorized already, knew it all.
Wow.
And like, it wasn't supposed to be Gene Wilder. And like, I can't imagine that movie.
That couldn't be anybody but Gene Wilder.
Right.
Because that relationship between him and Bart could not have happened with anyone who was not as gentle a soul as Gene Wilder is.
And especially if you compare that to the line, like, I must have killed more men than Cecil B. DeMille. And here's this gentle, quiet, sweet-eyed, nice guy who's talking about killing over and over and over again. And you're like, I actually believe that was exhausting for you in a way that you don't usually get when people in Westerns like, I just got so sick of it. It's like, no, I honestly
he
believe
seems like
that
a really
Jim's
sweet guy.
Yeah, Jim's like,
I'm
I
so
didn't want to keep killing people, but at a certain point, they were going to kill me if I didn't. And like, all their lines are some of my favorite of like, are we awake? We're not sure. Are we black? We are. We're awake, but we're very puzzled. And like that. And
that's my favorite exchange.
A man drinks like that and he don't eat, he's going to die. When? It's just such a great, and it's funny and also so like
sad,
nihilist. It's like that, and I could start beginning to end and tell you about like how Harvey Korman's amazing in that movie. Slim Pickens is amazing in the movie.
Madeline Kahn, who was Oscar nominated.
Do you want to know a weird fact? The guy that plays Slim Pickens' like right hand man, who now I'm really mad at myself that I can't remember the name of that character. But anyways, that actor is in another very famous Western. He's in Back to the Future 3.
Who's he playing?
He's the guy with the shooting booth who like that's him. So it happens in the same universe. Blazing Saddles and Back to the Future.
Sure.
But like everyone in that movie is so on point. And I think that it's one of those where it's like, it's a razor's edge movie.
Yes.
Where I think it's very easy that like, it could have been very offensive. And if there are some like fairly obvious jokes that once again, I think this is the restraint thing of like, they also had like 10 writers, I think, throughout the whole, the whole event.
That was a committee written movie for sure.
And once again, not his original idea. Somebody brought the idea to Mel, like somebody who I think originally was like a dentist brought the idea to Mel Brooks and was like,
Andrew Bergman.
Yeah. And he was like, okay. But it was just a treatment. He was like, this is great. And he's like, well, I want you to do it. And basically just handed it over to Mel Brooks. And so then he and like Richard Pryor and like 5 other dudes.
Norman Steinberg, Alan Uger were 2 of the other,
they sat down and like basically locked themselves in like a room for a week and like wrote the first draft. And they went through so many rewrites and like studio notes and everything to get to where they were. And that's the restriction of it. That's like, I think it holds up to this day. I don't think you could make it how it is now.
Yes.
Because I think there would be people who would be like, yeah, but like, there are going to be people that are
not
upset,
made by a straight white male.
Yeah, I don't think made at all. Because I don't think that for a comedy, a big budget comedy, I don't think there's a studio that would be like, yeah, this is fine. Like, because that's the thing. The people who look at it and go, oh, so it's racist. I'm like, no, watch it.
No, it's fun. It's, that's the whole.
There would be a studio exec who would watch the first 5 minutes and be like, you say like 8 slurs in the first 5 minutes. It's like, no, but the point is like, it's an Archie Bunker. It's a terrible people doing it.
Yeah.
And then like, Bart steps up and like makes everybody around him look dumb.
Yes. Oh, when he holds himself hostage.
Yeah. Like, and that's such a great metaphor for like the whole movie is like, he has to put in 5% effort to be better than everyone else.
Yeah.
Like, he's just so much smarter and better and more like, and also in a way, Cleavon Little, that part would have, like, I think there's a way it could have ended up being kind of insufferable.
Yeah.
Of just,
But he brought just enough suave Bugs Bunny to that part.
Yes, that's perfect. Like, that's exactly it. He is Bugs Bunny in that of just like,
he's a cool, smart, groovy Bugs Bunny.
Yeah. And that's the thing is the whole movie is about like, looking past the thing. And like, you see that over and over again of like, and you look at Jim and you're like, oh, he's washed up drunk. No, he's actually the greatest gunfighter who's ever lived.
Yeah.
Mongo, he's a big, stupid guy. Actually, he's kind of a philosopher and a sweetheart. And like, oh, Bart, like, oh, he's just a guy working on the railroad. No, he's a genius and like an amazing strategist. Right. And like, you look throughout and there's all these characters like, where it's like, you know what? Actually, if you get to know them, they're incredibly interesting and better. And that's like, what I love about that is so very clearly the message of the movie, but not like so like beat you over the head with it as to be like, I get it. Please stop preaching at me about it. It's a movie that by the end of it, you're like, you know what? I'm going to try to be less racist.
It could easily be preachy, but it's so funny.
That's the thing. It's like, that's how I want lessons, you know, like I think I first watched Blazing Saddles when I was 11 and I laughed at, you know, every other joke, right? Then I watched it again when I was like 15 and I watched at 2 out of every 3 jokes. And then I watched it when I was 18 and I laughed at 3 out of 4. And then like I watched it when I was 25 and I think there hit a point where I watched it and like didn't laugh so much as I went, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
Like I have, and this is not an exaggeration, not hyperbole, watched it over 1,000 times. That like, I watch it about twice a month, 3 times a month.
Wow.
And when I worked at, the Shakespeare Theater, I would put it on the sound system on repeat and just like play it straight through. So I would listen to it. And like, it hit a point where I was like, this movie is genius. This is watching someone dance through lasers over a pit of lava across a rope swing and never misstep and never hit a point where it's like, well, but that's awful.
Right.
Like that, like, and I say that, I also want to say like, I'm a straight white dude. I'm sure there are moments in it where someone's like, no, it missteps a lot.
Yeah.
But I am watching it through the lens of like, it was made, 1974. And the fact that it says what it says in the way that it does, 43 years ago? In a way that, like, now the majority of it is still like, nope, it's still okay. Like, 80% of it is still like, definitely like unassailable.
That's the beauty of it too, is that that movie stands the test of time because unfortunately everything that was a problem then is still a problem now.
Yeah.
Right.
So all of these, like, whereas the jokes that he's making in that trilogy of parodies later on is pretty specific to those movies or those times. These are, unfortunately, again, pretty universal things that are like, well, racism's going to be around for at least the next 100 years.
Right.
So we'll make a comment on it now about our moment in time that'll still be relevant, unfortunately, several decades later.
Right.
And I also think, to compare it to those later films, I also think that when you watch it as many times as I have, there is layer upon layer upon layer of jokes. So you would watch the first time and be like, man, they make a lot of jokes about race or whatever. Or you would say like, oh, that fart scene's great. And then the second time you're like, wow, they made a lot of jokes about race and like, issues with like, you know, immigration versus naturalism and like land grabbing and like white elitism and the government. But then you watch it the third time, you're like, wow, there's like levels of jokes that I did not catch. For example, the running joke of everyone's last name is Johnson.
Yeah.
It's funny. But like the more you think about it, like they don't really like ever look at the camera and go, everyone's last name. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
everyone's last name is Johnson. Mm-hmm. Is that funny? But then there's a board in the back of like the town hall scene where all the members, it's just like H Johnson, W Johnson.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's so funny. And it's only funny because you didn't like barrel down the camera and take to the camera and say like, we named everyone Johnson.
Because they trust their audience. Mel Brooks trusts his audience at that point.
And like that kind of like those kinds of layers. For example, like the cows running through the town hall and then through the movie theater. It's like, that's not, there's no punchline to that. That's not like.
Just for fun.
It's just a weird layer. That's so weird and funny. And like that to me, I love more than anything. Where it's just like, I don't know why that's funny. But I don't think you do either.
Right.
You just know it's funny.
Yes. So this is a finalist.
This is look. We still need to talk about the producers and of course the 12 Chairs, that masterpiece that everyone knows of Mel Brooks's canon.
I assume the 12 Chairs, while I'm sure it is a very good film.
Sure.
And
Have you seen it?
Is a remake.
I have not seen it.
I have.
Is it good?
Is it a finalist?
This is a fun story of how I saw 12 Chairs.
Tell us your story.
Okay.
I watched at my friend Nick's house. Nick Reynolds showed me Young Frankenstein and History of the World and Robin Hood Men in Tights. And my friend Steven Meniscus showed me Blazing Saddles. And I was like, I love this. And I went to my local library and I said, do you guys have any Mel Brooks movies? And they said, we have this one. And I said, I love Mel Brooks movies. And I was like 13, I think. And so I rented, it was a summer break, and I rented from the library 12 Chairs. And I watched it. And at the whole movie, I was like, what is this? Here's the thing about it. It's funny, but it is a dark, straight comedy.
Right.
It is like, it is story, situation. It is, it's, I think the closest he gets to writing Neil Simon.
Okay. Who he wrote in the writer's room with
exactly.
Caesar.
Yeah. And he wrote like a movie with jokes, but it's
Neil Simon style.
Yeah. Of like, the jokes are like, oh, can you believe I got to deal with this? But not like a 20-minute long fart scene. Right. So it's funny,
but it's not a best contender. No. So let's go to, so far we have, Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, it seems like they're locks. We've got a soft hold on High Anxiety and a soft hold on History of the World Part 1. This is my hard hold. I think the producers, this would be, if this show were just called Hal Tells You What He Thinks Are the Best Things, I would say that The Producers is his best movie.
Well, I think that what it really, that I think unequivocally I can agree with you on, it is his best concept movie. It is the most original, like, what if two people tried to make money by having a flop?
Yes.
And like, that is not a take on, it's not a spoof of anything. It's like a completely original IP. Yes. That is also and I think one of the reasons that it has worked as a movie, then a musical, and then a movie again is like, no, but like, it is an interesting concept that theater people eat up like candy, because it's like there's so many jokes about theater and theater producing and making a show that everybody's like, yeah, that's great. And it's like funny, like the audition scene, right? Is so funny for anyone who's ever auditioned people before. And it's like, yes, I know exactly how this feels, except to imagine that, but you want the worst person? Is this weirdly empowering feeling of like, each person is worse than the last. And it's great.
But I don't think you have to be a theater person.
No, not at all.
If you are a theater person, you get it probably on a different level because it some way it is a funhouse mirror held up to experiences you've actually had.
Correct.
But again, the concept is a solid gold concept. The cast is incredible. It is a great Gene Wilder performance. Zero Mostel is great.
Zero Mostel is amazing.
Kenneth Mars again is fantastic. Dick Shawn.
He plays the writer.
He is the person who wrote Springtime for Hitler.
He's the Nazi. We'll just say the word.
He's just a Nazi.
Because that's what his character is.
He's a Nazi who sought refuge in New York City and has written a play glorifying Hitler.
But the thing about it, okay, this is my soft negative response.
Go ahead.
One time my family and I got in a pretty epic debate because we went to see The Village the M. Night Shyamalan movie. And I said it was a fine movie and a terrible M. Night movie. And my justification was, if I didn't know anything about the director and I just wanted to saw the movie, I would have thought it was fine. But my expectation level was so high because previously I had liked M. Night Shyamalan's work so much that it fell short of my expectations specifically for him. Right?
Okay.
My feeling is Producers is a great movie, but compared to the other movies I love of his, it is an outlier.
But it's his first attempt.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's his first movie, and it's what he did as, I'm going to make one big offensive joke and see if it clicks.
Which he does.
And it did.
It's great.
And so then Blazing Saddles happens. I'm going to make as many offensive jokes as I can. You couldn't have had a Blazing Saddles without a producer.
It is wildly different.
Yes.
I'll grant you that. It is not a gag-a-minute movie because it is about the story and about these characters in a way that none of the other movies are, even though they have great characters, and I know we spent a ton of time basically talking about how central the buddy relationship in Blazing Saddles is. However, I just feel like this was him actually making a movie.
Yes.
Which none of these other films are. All the other films to some extent are sketches around that are wrapped around the core of a story.
And this is his debut movie. That's
yes.
we can't look at it we can't look at it as an outlier within a canon.
Right.
Because it's the first one.
And it's also unfair to say, well, it was just his first movie. I mean, he won an Oscar.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it
Right.
I'm not denigrating
No, but it
it because
evolves.
it's the
I
first.
see.
Because here's the thing. I also
Punch you,
think
Mark.
Yeah, you seem really upset about that.
Right in your puss.
if you look at the difference between the scale, right? If you look at this like a scale, and if you remove like Life Stinks and 12 Chairs, right? If you were to lay on a scale of like focus on story, focus on gags, on one end it's Producers, and on the other end is Dracula Dead and Loving It, and I think right square in the middle, like kind of splitting center, is Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein.
Which in this image, having that right in the middle, splitting this spectrum, we're looking at a bell curve here, and that is the apex of it, is Blazing Saddles.
I actually think Blazing Saddles is on the side of story, and Young Frankenstein is on the side of gags. But I say that every time I watch it, I'm going to feel differently, because I think they both, once again, and I know that I keep saying this, which was a really weird metric for movies where this isn't how you should judge it.
Right.
But either movie, remove every joke from it, and I think I would still enjoy watching it. You know what I mean? Like, and also, on some level, I think if you remove the story from Blazing Saddles, I think it would still be funny.
Yeah.
But the meta part wouldn't make sense though. If you took every joke out of it, because the ending is a giant joke.
Absolutely.
So the Producers, if you took all the jokes out of it, would be a tragedy and would be a really compelling tragedy to watch. Not that again, it's weird to say, well, if we're going to look at the best Mel Brooks movie, we've got to look at how it would be without any of the jokes in it.
This is why you have to watch 12 Chairs. Because 12 Chairs feels like Producers with no jokes.
I see.
Because like 12 Chairs is two people.
Yeah.
It's basically the story of 12 Chairs is this guy learns from, I think, his mother on her deathbed that when they were fleeing Russia, like I said, I haven't seen this in 20 years. So I might be getting the names and dates wrong. But when they were fleeing their country because of invaders, she hid all of their family jewels and riches in one of 12 chairs that they had. And then she dies without telling him like which one. And throughout time, these 12 chairs, one of them's in a museum, one of them's in the Tsar's house, one of them's at this place, one of them's been destroyed. And they go, and it's basically a quest of these two people, the son and this kind of like fast talking funny guy that he meets, like going around Russia trying to find these 12 chairs and secretly cut them open to see if they are the ones with the jewels inside. Which is a funny premise. And that funny premise leads to funny scenes, but there's no like slapsticky jokes. But basically, he said, what if I made Producers? But I made it like a sad, like Russo tragedy.
Right.
And so it's a tragic comedy, like Chekhov tragic comedy.
Where did we go right?
Right. It's funny shit. But it's like he said, I'm going to make Producers, but without any fun in it. And then people were like, make Blazing Saddles.
Yeah.
Just
that's
make
the
Blazing Saddles now.
Let me throw this out, if I may. Were you about to?
I was going to say we've got what 5 finalists.
Well, look,
right
we've
now?
got a lot of finalists. In the interest of time, we've gone through all of these in a pretty in-depth way.
Yes.
And I'm listening to the way that we've all given, I think, proper credit to our favorites.
And I do love producers. I do want to say I'm not trying to knock producers.
No.
Okay.
We know you're a fan. You are wearing a Mel Brooks shirt that you did not realize you were wearing.
No, I wear it. It's in my rotation once a week. I'm wearing the Mel Brooks shirt.
How many shirts are in your rotation?
7.
Good.
No, I don't really know. I just have a lot of plain t-shirts. That's just like it's blue t-shirt day, I guess.
Mark, how many shirts are in my rotation?
3.
Thank
you.
You
have 3 Hal Loveland has 3 t-shirts.
I'm wearing my Avengers shirt today.
Yeah. Okay. You have a Captain America, an Avengers, and a Thrilling Adventure.
If you look at like fan pics from cons, this is in a third of them.
Yep.
Nice.
So it sounds like what we have done in talking about these, we have given proper credit to each of our individual favorites.
Yes.
We have said the ones that we believe should move on to the finals, but I do feel like there is one movie out of all of these that all 3 of us leapt on immediately as an icon. Would you guys agree with that?
Life Stinks.
Yes, Life Stinks.
Yeah, we all loved it.
It's the best one.
Would you guys say that that's a fair assessment of what has happened here?
Yes, definitely. But I do think, because I feel like you're leaning towards...
It's not Blazing Saddles.
I think it absolutely is Blazing Saddles.
You think it's Blazing Saddles? I thought you were going to say Young Frankenstein.
No, I was going to say Blazing Saddles because we all said Young Frankenstein was great, yes, but when we talked about Blazing Saddles, we talked about it being the iconic piece of cinema and comedy that it was.
But here's the question. This is what I've been asking myself all day. What is the determination? Is it what's the better movie? What's the movie I love more?
In this show... We like to air, and we were actually talking about this on an interview just yesterday.
Yeah.
Our Ghostbusters episode. Everyone loves Bill Murray. Bill Murray is an icon and the greatest.
But
he is not the best Ghostbuster. Egon is the best Ghostbuster.
Yeah,
exactly.
So bearing that in mind, it can't be about which ones are our personal favorites.
Right.
Which one is objectively the best.
There could be overlap, but I think there is an objective best.
But my Spaceballs... Your, Travis, your Young Frankenstein, and Hal, your producers, I do not think beats our collective Blazing Saddles.
I feel like that's true. I mean, here's the thing. It's like, I'm trying to be, I guess I would be trying to be disruptive of like, you thought I was going to say Blazing Saddles, but no, at the end of the day, Blazing Saddles is hands down my favorite movie.
Yeah.
And I think it's because it's the one, it is the movie, that if I were only allowed to ever watch one movie for the rest of my life, it would be Blazing Saddles. I could watch it over and over. I've, in one day, watched it 5 times. Like, I love that movie. I think there's a possibility that Young Frankenstein is a better made movie.
Okay.
But.
Well, wait a second.
But
wouldn't that make it the best?
How?
No, but what I'm saying is
we're going to be here till 3 in the morning.
People of the world.
Here's the thing.
I could do it right now.
Here's the thing. Yes. What I'm saying is, I think somebody who is unbiased could make a strong argument to convince me that that Young Frankenstein is a better made movie.
Right.
But like, I can't do that. I could see if you said we're taking Blazing Saddles out of the running, I could write you a 100-page term paper on why Young Frankenstein is amazing.
Right.
Okay. So both of you have made arguments for Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
Now let me briefly speak.
Okay.
People of the world, I get no kick from producers. High anxiety and Young Frankenstein make me laugh, but they're not the best. 'Cause I get a kick out of Blazing Saddles. The best of the Mel Brooks movies. Watch all of them.
Yeah,
watch
you
it,
should.
If
you're not a Mel Brooks fan, and first of all, why are you listening to this episode?
Pretend like the world ended in 1981, right after History of the World Part 1 came out, and then enjoy all those Mel Brooks movies.
May I pitch to you,
please,
an order that I think people, if they've never watched Mel Brooks movies before, should watch.
Go for it.
Okay.
You should watch Young Frankenstein first. I think it's the easiest on board. And like, you don't have to be bought into the style of comedy. Then Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
Right? And then I would say History of the World Part 1.
Okay.
Then Robin Hood Men in Tights. Then Spaceballs. Then you're going to swing back out with High Anxiety.
The double feature High Anxiety and silent movie?
Okay. And that's what I would say. Those are the core ones that like, and producers. And I think finish on original producers.
Okay.
And then I think if you are interested in it, I think silent movie is a perfect, interesting meta bit, but I think that, and especially, you don't have to watch Dracula. I'm giving you permission. You don't have to watch Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Fair enough.
To feel like you've completed the canon.
Travis McElroy.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you. It's
This
a
was
pleasure.
such a treat, my friend.
Now, in addition to My Brother and Me, Schmanners, trends like these, the Adventure Zone, surprisingly nice. You have a bunch of stuff out, the My Brother and Me series on CISO.
Correct.
What else, where people can go to one place to find everything you're doing?
The easiest is go to McElroyshows.com, McElroyshows.com, and there you can find links to all of my family's podcasts. I think there's like 15 or 16 at this point.
Yes.
Collectively.
Holy moly.
And they're all
the first
great.
family of podcasts.
Yeah, none of us has just one. And then also there's YouTube series there, our contact information for like our Twitter accounts, our like PO boxes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You can follow me on Twitter at Travis McElroy. If you want to tell me why Blazing Saddles is amazing, at Travis McElroy. If you want to write me a letter about why it's not, don't. Yeah, the end. Go check out all my podcasts.
Awesome.
Most of them are on MaximumFun.org though. So like, you can just,
The Max Fun Network. We're familiar with it.
Yeah,
it's a
so are you
wonderful
aware?
place to be.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. And thank you to both Mark Easterbrook and Jim Corbett who suggested this in our Facebook group.
Yes.
This topic is now sealed. It is asked and answered, but there's so many more out there and we want to hear from you about them. Email us at wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com or go to our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/wegotThisPodcast.
Or you can reach out to us on Twitter at We Got This Tweets, or check out the Maximum Fun subreddit. A flame war could be happening right now.
Thank you to producer Ken Plume, researcher Kate McManus, who put together a great spreadsheet on this,
Thank you,
graphic
Kate.
designer Uri Kelman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And thank you as always to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song respectively. And of course, thanks to you, our listeners. We are all such big Mel Brooks fans here. How else would we have the opportunity to sit with our dear friend Travis McElroy while he is visiting Los Angeles, and talk about movies, unless you guys were listening to the show. So thank you very much. We really appreciate you.
I want to say one last thing.
Please.
One last thing.
Please.
Because I'm talking about the canon. If you can find the recordings of the live 2,000-Year-Old Man with Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner, it is the most delightful to people, like just like listening to Carl Reiner just enjoy Mel Brooks, and Carl Reiner being one of the greatest straight men in comedy history to Mel Brooks's big, bold choices.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want to be a funny improver, if you want to be a funny sketch writer, listen to Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner obsessively, and it teaches you everything you need to know.
They are comedy school, and
Yep.
the master class of comedy school
Yes.
is not only these guys, but I think we got it right. I think Blazing Saddles in particular.
Well,
Nailed
also
it.
because Madeline Kahn, I think.
She's amazing.
Yes.
Oh God, I could talk about that movie so long. Like,
We have to go, Travis. We have to go.
but every face that Madeline Kahn makes in that movie cracks me. With her whole song when she does the patter with the guys in the audience is so funny. That just the it's okay. Okay, but it's
For Hal Lublin,
She
I'm
has
Mark
this
Gagliardi.
moment where she's
And
just
for
like,
Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin.
and
And
she
don't
doesn't
worry,
modulate
everyone.
the note.
We got this.
It's amazing.
We got this.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned.
Listener supported.